Today's guest is someone who holds a very special place in my life and in my heart. Krista Hollingsworth. She was my very first spiritual coach, and working with her changed the trajectory of my life. Because of our work together, I chose myself in ways that felt terrifying at the time and profoundly freeing in hindsight. Krista is the founder of Joy Code, among other companies, and what she offers isn't a philosophy, it's a way of living in truth. This conversation is about joy as power, choice, and remembrance. I am deeply honored to welcome her to Pick Joy today. Welcome, Krista Hollingsworth.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And it was very kind what you said in the intro.
It's all true. It's all true.
Wow.
So, Krista, for people who don't know you yet, tell us how you introduce yourself.
So I work with, small business owners and I help them grow. And a lot of the work we do centers actually around, mindset and reframing certain things because we're always getting in our own way, because anything can be a mirror for where you are in your life. So when I introduce myself to a business group, I just say I help people grow. And we have two businesses. I have K Hollingsworth Consulting, and then we also have Windshore Media. You mentioned Joy Code. I haven't been doing Joy Code specifically for quite a long time, but interestingly, I've been running into old students so recently and asking me for it. So maybe there's more Joy Code to come. We'll see. So
maybe that's a sign.
Yeah.
And I think with the work that you do, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's all connected, like the emotional part and how you show up in the world, how you show up at work and in the rest of your life. It's all connected.
Oh, absolutely. When you and I met all those years ago, we were both in the midst of raising children and being married at the time. I mean, I'm remarried now. And so a lot of the conversations we had were around ourselves in relationship to our children, ourselves in relationship to our partners. Sometimes I would have people come that would talk about business, but mostly it was about relationships. And so, yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Because now, like in the business context, you still have relationship issues. You still have to deal with your own fears and anxieties around letting go of even certain aspects of the business in order for the business to thrive and to grow, in order for you to be a better leader. So a lot of those things come into play. I don't generally lead with that. It comes up naturally as we're having a conversation about where they are in the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before you started this kind of work, who were you? And what was missing for you back then, even if you didn't have the language for it? What changed over the years before you started I think particularly the Joy Code, which has now led into corporate work, but like your joy work?
Yeah. So it was a long evolution. And I was really fortunate because I met my first spiritual teacher when I was probably 22 or 23 years old. And I was hungry to understand myself better. I believe I had a lot of trauma, unresolved trauma. You're 23. I mean, you always have stuff in your 20s. So, but I had some unresolved trauma from growing up, and spiritual practice and meditation and journaling was this amazing awakening. And prior to that, when I was in college, because I have a marketing degree, I started taking courses in religious studies. And the first time I took the class, it was because it was an easy A. Everyone's like, oh, take this class. It's an easy A. It will, fill a requirement, this, that, and the other. And I walk into this class. It was Religion 100, Religious Studies 100. And it was in an auditorium, basically. And so I'm sitting in the back because I'm really just there for the grade. And this man, this older gentleman, he's probably 50, but to me, he looked like could have been 100 because I was 19. So he comes on the stage and he has a slight limp, I think, and he's tall and he has gray hair and he's wearing these little glasses. And he starts talking and he has the most beautiful voice. And he just starts talking about the different religions and how they're connected. And the next week, I sat in the front row. Mm. And so I almost, at that time, got a religious studies degree.
Oh, wow.
Because I fell in love with learning about these different cultures through the lens of their religion. And I feel like part of my purpose on the planet, I think everybody's purpose, but, for me, I'm here to be relational. Mm-hmm. And I feel that part of my job is to love as many people as I can. And that's really hard when you have all of this stuff going on and people irritate you or hurt you. When you hurt yourself, you got to learn to love yourself. So religious studies was a really safe way in order for me to explore a lot of these different things. So all of that combined, like in my early years. And then over time, it was just, Sabine, it was just like a layering on. Like each time I learned something new, I wanted to share it. I wanted to share it with people. And so, then I had another spiritual teacher who was a shamanic practitioner, really opened up another avenue for me. I went back to school to get a degree in religious studies. And then when I moved out to the South Bay, because I was in Orange County at that time. So when I moved back home to the South Bay, I started teaching journaling, and doing spiritual counseling. And it just kind of took off from there. So it was an evolution, over many decades. And I learned from my students, as much as they learned from me, if not more, because of the kinds of questions and issues. And, we go into contemplation together to see what could be resolved.
That's so true. That's what I found over the last few years coaching people, that I always walked away with something new with every coaching session that I had with somebody. It's really, it's a mutual exchange of things, definitely. Yeah. When you hear the words pick joy, what do they mean to you as a lived choice? Not as a quote, but as a lived choice.
Well, I love what we were talking about earlier when you said that, making those micro changes and not having to do, like blow everything up. For me, picking joy is about allowing yourself the grace to start over at any moment. So, you promised yourself you were going to, cut your carbs in half, but somebody brings you a brownie. And that brownie looks delicious. It's going to be delicious. It would be rude to say no to the person that gave you the brownie.
So rude.
You eat the brownie and then you're mad at yourself because you didn't, it's like, I said I was going to do this. You can start over. And so for me, that is really choosing joy. It's like, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole of beating myself up for the next, day and a half. And then punish myself by, just having water or whatever. I'm going to pick joy. So for me, I that's what it is. It's just that starting over.
And why do you think joy is so often misunderstood as something that's indulgent, or it's optional, or it needs to be earned, as a reward? Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is?
I imagine that most of the people that are watching this are women. And so picking joy, picking happiness means choosing yourself first. And that is a cultural dilemma that a lot of us are working through. And we're in this new age where we're able to talk about it. So I believe that that's one of the biggest hurdles. And oftentimes, if you just understand that picking joy means picking myself and what I want matters. In fact, most mornings, I won't say every morning, most mornings I do a reading for myself. I'll pick a card, I'll do journaling. And the card I picked, not just once, but a couple of times, is this card called Nurture. And my affirmation is what I choose or what I want and need matters to me. That's my affirmation for the week. So it's interesting that we're having this conversation about that. So I think that's, for me, that's why it feels indulgent for most people, because it's about choosing your own desires in the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
So that, like, I'm curious. So does joy feel like something, what's the word, we access or acquire? Is it something we actually remember? Do you think
Well,
it's
that's an excellent
innate?
question. Yeah, that's an excellent question. You know, people pursue happiness, which I think is a concept. And I think that happiness is connected to material well being, where I believe joy is innate. And if you can imagine that we exist on a scale, right? I actually drew this picture, but we'll just say it's a scale where there's absolute, love and light, and then absolute darkness, which actually is a creation point, but I won't get into that. We exist along this continuum. And so joy is part of the words that we use to express something that is innate. It's part of our spiritual and I think psychological DNA. That's how I see it. Yeah.
I'm glad. I'm glad because that's what it feels like to me. I'm like, don't burst my bubble. I think we all have that. And I think we forget because life gets so busy and we get kind of programmed, I want to say, through educators, through society of what's important and what we should focus on. And then we forget. But it's not indulgent. It's something we need to remember. And often people say to me, they're like, well, that would be selfish if I would put myself first, But I always think that, look, you're a good person. And just because you put yourself first, it doesn't mean you're going to neglect or abandon everybody else in your life. Like you're still going to take care of the people, but if you remember yourself and the joy, then you're going to make choices that are kind of in the gray where you maybe compromise on something. Like, for example, if you had this plan for yourself to take the evening off and take a bath and just and like enjoy yourself and relax, and your kid comes to you and says, "Oh, mom, can you drive me tonight to my friend's house or to wherever, to this concert or whatever?" And I think our knee-jerk reaction is, "Oh my God, yes, of course," where I think if you make yourself a priority, maybe you're going to get creative and say, who else is going? Let's check in, if somebody else is driving and maybe they can take you this time and I'll take you next time, So it's not about being selfish, but it's about just changing our lens a little bit to find solutions or responses that keep ourselves in mind as well.
I absolutely agree with that. And again, it is challenging and, to take that pause, to just take a moment, like you said, before the knee-jerk reaction and, and give yourself, permission to do those things. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I really believe that joy is something that, like I said, it's already innate. And so having practices like that, like the one that you just described, doesn't make you think, oh, I need to be in joy. I need to enjoy myself. But if I just take a breath and have the awareness, I'm giving space for joy to arise from within me. And that's like the best little micro practice that you can have, is just doing the pause, taking a breath, reframing, and just allowing. Yeah.
Why do you think that choosing yourself is so hard, even when we're unhappy? And in your experience, what are women really afraid of losing? What's holding them back to make changes?
That is a layered question. What is holding women back, people back from choosing themselves I believe a lot of it is about understanding the territory is familiar. So I had this client years ago, many, many years ago, who had really high stress, high anxiety, and she was a trauma nurse. And then she had trauma with her boyfriend. And then she would come home and watch these shows that, you know, heightened the trauma. So she was always at this, and this is an extreme example. She was always at this heightened space. And when we were in contemplation together, what I saw was a minefield. So there were two fields. One was a minefield, and then one was this open prairie, and it was beautiful. But she knew where to step in the minefield, so it was more comfortable. So even though we're suffering, right? We're suffering and things aren't going the way that we want, and we're frustrated and our partners aren't showing up, they don't want to go to therapy or whatever it is. We stay because we know exactly what the terrain is and it feels familiar. And humans are wired for familiarity because it helps us to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the safety component as well. But that field was right next door. So someone like you, Sabine, would be able to go to someone and say, there's this beautiful poppy field right here. I'll hold your hand and walk you through it, or at least introduce you to it. And maybe then you can explore it on your own. I mean, this is why we need each other to have these conversations, because you've been in a place that they hope is there, but that they don't know how to access yet.
Right.
So, I do think that coaches and spiritual teachers and therapists, it's very powerful to have someone take you by the hand lovingly, not shoving you into, you should go over there. This beautiful invitation to walk into that field.
So
And
how do you do that?
Less terrifying.
Like, how do you do that in a practical way? How do you help people trust themselves? Because ultimately we need to trust ourselves to make change,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
How to trust themselves when there's all this fear? How do you do that?
Well, there's levels of fear, right? If they're watching this, there's a part of them that is already dipping their toe in. They already sense that there's something else if they're watching this. And that is that's the invitation, so, and again, I think your point about micro changes, it doesn't have to be, I'm going to just, change everything in my life all at once. It's this idea that it could be better. And then I also think one of the things that I did, and one of the things that we did together, was like seeing somebody who's already there and knowing that if she can do it, then I can do it. And the fact that I can see it and I can see where her path is also an invitation. It's actually a map. Now, when you start to walk that map, maybe the terrain has changed a little bit. But that's why it's so important, like the work that you're doing, that, I'm here, I've blown my life up and I've put it back together, not once, but many times. And I have this awareness, I have this understanding now. And so you have created a map and you're looking back and you're inviting people to join you. If somebody has the courage to just say yes, one day at a time or one moment at a time, they're going to get there because they'll be able to see Sabine did it, I can do it too. And even that takes a little bit of work to say I can do it too, because some people will say, well, she's special or whatever. but really it's that knowing. I tell my daughters that, somebody's got to win that game. Somebody's got to win that Grammy. Why not you? So to your listeners and our friends out there, why not you? Why not you?
Yeah.
So
I think one of the greatest gifts you gave me was we did a vision and we repeated it a few times.
Yes.
Familiarizing myself with what I really wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you made me go into this vision of what my life would look like, because a lot of people don't even know what they want. They know I'm unhappy, but they don't really know what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And you sat me down and said, okay, think about the life that you want. What would it look like? And I was like, I don't know. But you asked me questions like, what are you wearing? And
Yes.
what do you see? And what's the light like? And you prompted me to like build brick by brick a vision of the life that I hadn't even thought through, you know? And
Mhm.
so I familiarized myself with my own vision, and then you actually suggested for me, like we were looking at my kitchen in my vision, and you made me describe like things that were in my kitchen, and you
Mhm.
actually suggested for me to go out and buy, like for me it was a little salt pot,
Mhm.
and I ended up finding that salt pot exactly the way I saw it in my vision. And I still have that salt pot in my kitchen today. But while I was walking this path of making my vision a reality, you know, that little salt pot was sitting already in my old kitchen, reminding me of that other life, of what that
Mhm.
felt like. And it was out there. And it was such a powerful exercise because it
Mhm.
helped me get a clearer vision of what I wanted and how I wanted to feel and who I was in that.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was really, I will never forget that, and life changing.
Yeah, those are some of the techniques that, that I do for myself still. When you feel, where am I? Is stepping into the dream, which is, and bringing a piece of that dream back with you. Yeah. To help to elevate your consciousness and connect with the dream that is already there. And one of the things that, we talk about is if you didn't know that it was already a potential, you wouldn't know to want it,
Right.
right? You wouldn't know, you wouldn't have a taste for it. So, one of the stories we talk about is, when I was young, my dad would, we'd go to the store and, those days you'd pick the fruit before you buy it. So not
Right.
everybody does that, but we did. And he'd be like, the fruit of my country is like so much, better and more delicious. And, and he had this yearning for it. And I didn't have the yearning for it because I hadn't tasted it before. I didn't
Right.
know what that was like. And so if you're yearning for something, which you were, and I was, and I'm sure the people watching this, they're yearning. Your yearning means that it is a potential within you, that there's a part of you that knows that it's possible because you've touched it before, you've tasted it before.
Mm.
And so bringing something back from the vision, if you can put yourself in that state where where it can really be tactile for you, and bringing something back makes the vision or makes the dream alive in you. And it is extremely powerful. I hope you teach it to other people. I hope you're working with it,
I
Sabine.
did. I did. Oh, I
Good.
have, yes, because it had such an impact in my life. Is that what the Joy Code is about? Tell me a little bit more about Joy Code.
Yeah, Joy Code is exactly what it sounds like. That's really what it was, meant to be, and to help the individual expand and reveal their own joy, what was natural for them, or what is natural for them. So, and rethinking it, now that I've had more time, being more time on the planet, you get wiser as you get older,
Hmm.
hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. And some of us do. Some of us are late bloomers, and that's totally okay. So, yeah, so Joy Code was meant to be an area, really deep spiritual learning and community. So at one point I was doing like spiritual masterminds with a specific group for a year long
Mhm.
mastermind. And that was amazing. All of that kind of fell apart in 2020.
Yeah.
We did it, I think, maybe through 2021 and 2022. But then again, like I made a pivot. But you never know. Maybe I'll go back to doing some of the Joy Code stuff. So just because it keeps coming up, and you were so
Yes.
gracious to invite me here and to talk about it.
So, based on the experiences you've had in your own life, but also the people
Mhm.
that you work with, how can somebody tell that they're out of alignment? before their life actually forces them to change or their life falls apart? How can you tell?
Oh gosh. So I've been really contemplating this question in preparation for our conversation today. If somebody is watching this, they may be on the verge of blowing something up, or they may have already blown it up and they're trying to figure out how to move forward from there. When I think about my own life, when I think about her, the person that I was, and that actually still lives in me somewhere here, she didn't have a choice except to blow it up. There were no other options that she could see. And even though I was having dreams, even though things weren't working, they were on the periphery of my vision, and I couldn't grasp them. Looking back, I still would have left my life at the time, but I would have done it very differently knowing what I know now. And I wouldn't change anything because my life right now is like so beautiful. And so I remember having this dream. I had this really vivid dream walking through a house. I won't give you all the details, but walking through a house, and it was really dark, this long, dark hall. It was like haunted. And when I stopped and I started to turn back, there were monsters that would come out of the rooms. And so I would continue to walk right through the hall. And I got to the end, and there were these double doors, and it opened up to the most beautiful beach vista. And that dream helped me to know that I'm on the right path, even though it's dark right now, that I'm going to get to that place. And so every now and again, I would ask myself, or check in, and it's like, you're still walking, you're still in the dark, but you're moving in the right direction. And, so I don't have a clear-cut answer for that, because it really is on the periphery, and you don't really know it sometimes until it happens. And sometimes women don't know, at least I didn't, you don't know that there's an alternative. You don't know that there could be another way. Sometimes you don't want to face the truth too. And that's really scary. I don't really want to be in this job. I don't want to be in this relationship. I am not aligned with the person I wanted to be. I don't even know who I want to be. So a lot of this happens in midlife, as you know, right? It's a midlife thing, which is totally appropriate, that a person would have an awakening in midlife. And it's just the beginning of an awakening, because so many things are changing, so that's a really hard question. I would say, if you are deeply unhappy, if you are in perimenopause, if you are wanting to throw everybody out the window, that's a sign to take a breath and do some journaling and really start to focus on what it is that you really want to create. And more importantly, who do you want to be?
Right.
Because the vision, that we do, the visioning, wasn't about having things. It was about being. It was about becoming. So everybody ask themselves, am I the woman I want to be for the next half of my life? And if the answer is no, you have some work to do. If the answer is, I'm feeling pretty good, you still have some work to do. One of my all-time favorite stories, and it always brings a tear to my eye. So for me, not maybe for everybody else, is the story of the Buddha. So the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, before he became the Buddha, and I'm going to paraphrase, goes to the Bodhi tree, and he says, I'm either going to be enlightened or I'm going to die trying. So he has his lunch, sits under the tree, and he goes into a deep meditation. And after a time, Mara appears. Mara, according to, I believe, Thich Nhat Hanh, to say Mara is this demon. We're going to call him the demon of self-doubt. And Mara is, saying, who do you think you are that you think you could be enlightened? And Mara, shows, I've done all of this and all these armies, and, there's all of these people, these great people to witness to my greatness. Who do you think you are? And the Buddha takes his finger, touches the ground, and Gaia witnesses for him all the past lives in which he has earned the right to be enlightened. and the heavens and the earth shake. And they say, an enlightened one walks among us. And so the story's not done. So he goes to Deer Park and, he becomes a teacher. But every now and again, he'd be sitting there and he would see Mara. And sometimes he would say, what do you want? Invite Mara in for tea. And the story is that Mara isn't banished forever. The demon of self-doubt still shows up. And I love that story. Even the wisest among us has this demon here on the edge. So even if you feel, or oh, I'm feeling complete and whole and beautiful and joyful, and that's wonderful. The work now for you is to stay conscious. That's the work, is to stay conscious, is to stay in your joy as much as you can. So the work, we never get to a point, unfortunately, some people are like, dang it, where it's like, oh, I'm cooked, I'm done. If you were done, you'd be dead, or you'd be going to the next reality. So anyways, I love thinking about all of that. I know that was a long answer to your question, but
no, I love it. And it's, I have told some of my clients that before too. They're like, when I just get there, then, and I'm like, there is no finish line. That finish line keeps getting moved. And just because you think this is going to be the answer to your joy and happiness,
just wait. Yeah. And I often think, that if you have that awareness, if you're in touch with your joy and it's expansive, it's something that lives within you, you have access to it, you can lean into it. Maybe you want to call joy something else, but that feeling of grounding and connectedness, you need it, because your parents, if they haven't already passed, we're getting into midlife. Some of us are in this bridge between, you can be in your 50s, 55, I'm 55. You can be 55 and have a 15-year-old at home. And at the same time you have your 15-year-old at home, you have a 75-year-old parent or an 80-year-old parent that needs your help and guidance. And so thank goodness that you've been able to touch your joy, to remind you that you have a place within yourself that you can go as you deal with hormones and finances, or your teenagers' hormones and your hormones, and your parents may have Alzheimer's. Life is always teaching us. And you're right. There is no end, there's just this constant evolving. And with your own practice, the thing that I love is not just the feeling of joy, but the feeling of discovery, that there's another area of my life or of my own being that I'm discovering that I didn't quite know was there. And that is really amazing.
I agree. The last few years, I've felt like comparing life to like a video game, where like there's no, oh, that's it, now I conquered it all, like that's it, I have arrived. And sometimes people are a little depressed about this, that there's no arriving, but I think it teaches us two things. I think one of them is that there's always another level. There's always something else to grow into, which to me, I'm like a sponge. Like, it's very exciting to, okay, so what's next? How can we level up again? But it also teaches me some grace and kindness for myself, that, okay, well, everything looks beautiful. You achieved all of these things, and then something occurs that might bring you down, and often people, I think, especially women, they feel shame or guilt around feeling unhappy about something. They're like, oh, I should be so grateful. Everything is great. On the outside, everything is great. And they beat themselves up. And no, I think we can practice some grace and kindness to ourselves to say, okay, yeah, that sucked. It's, but it's okay. Like, what is it teaching me, or where is it helping me to expand myself a little bit more? It's okay. And this is what happens. And it has nothing to do with me. And don't take it personally. Just,
Mm-hmm.
so this is something that has really helped me over the years to not take life personally and just
Mm-hmm.
keep growing with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And I think going back to your question about, how do you know that maybe something is off? That feeling guilty for things being perfect is a sign
Mm.
that, for sure. I felt like that. I felt so guilty because I had everything that any woman would want. I was married, and we had a nice home. I had great kids, but there were other things that were missing, and I felt really
Mm.
unaligned and very disconnected and very unhappy. And even though I was doing all of this spiritual work, and even though I was doing all of this work on conscious, that was an area that I didn't want to look at. And then as a consequence, the unconscious mind is like, yeah, we need to blow this up right now because you're not paying attention. But I think, to your point earlier, that's a great indicator that there's something that is telling you you're not aligned. And don't think that you should be happy. You're not. Something is missing, and journal about it. Go into that space, because it's not going to go away. It will not go away.
So the other question that comes to mind is, do you think that our bodies know before our minds know the truth?
Yes. And so the body and the unconscious mind are one, right? So the body, the unconscious mind and the body know before the conscious mind knows.
Mm.
So before it's come into your awareness. So like I was saying, there are things that are happening on the periphery, like, just in your peripheral vision. You're not really paying attention to it. It's kind of there, but then you get distracted because you're distracted with work, you're distracted with your kids, you're distracted with the crazy news. So yeah, I do believe that our bodies, do tell the story of what we're feeling, for sure. So, and you can even think about, or I think about my body as even part of my, part of the physical environment. It is, your physical body. And so, your environment is always giving you feedback on, what's really going on inside. And I had a client once who had tremendous back pain and came from meditation. And as we're doing our work together, she, in a sense of frustration, says, the only time I can rest is when I'm in pain. So that pain was serving her unconscious mind. It was really helping her, because the only time that she felt it was okay to rest. And I know a lot of women right now, I can feel them going, oh my God,
Yeah.
that, yeah, the only time that she could rest was when she was in pain, physical pain. Doesn't mean you don't go to the doctor, doesn't mean that you don't do those things, but certainly having that awareness is going to help you to make different choices and honor yourself more.
What do you think happens when women choose joy without apologizing?
Oh, that's a great question. What do I think when women choose joy? I think that it's going to create some earthquakes in their lives, you know, but I would like to open up the possibility that the people around them are going to love it.
Mm.
That they're going to lean in, and some people won't, and some people will be like, I don't know who she thinks she is. They might have that moment, but your people are going to lean in, and you're going to smell like, fresh baked cookies or roses, and they're going to want more of that. You're going to be more attractive. And your family actually is likely to come along with the journey, come along on the journey with you, the journey to joy, even if they don't do it the exact same way that you're doing it. It gives them permission. I mean, my God, I do think a lot about the state of men, the state of everybody, women, men, we're all living in this world together. And actually, I was watching this thing on the video on Instagram, and it was this Black man says he was showing all the comments that he was getting when he was telling other Black men they should go to the doctor. because it's something within the culture that, our men don't go to the doctor very often. And the comments were bizarre and very fearful and very like, who do you think you are? And I won't say some of some of the things. So, if you're a person in a relationship and you've decided that day by day, not a big pronouncement, we are living in joy, darn it. But day by day, you are living your joy. You are giving your partner permission to open up to his or her joy. You're giving your children permission. It's, my mother on Saturdays would read. We did not bother mommy on Saturdays. That was her day. She'd lay on the couch and read a novel.
Wow.
And that was something that she really loved to do, and taught me that it's okay to take downtime. And with my kids, they took, mental health days before it was popular. It's like sometimes you can honor yourself in taking a break. So anyways, that's what I would say. Prepare for this,
And I think I want to add to this. I think it works both ways. Like when I started to choose differently for myself, there were people that saw this light in me who were more attracted to me, and I attracted new people. And at the same time, there were people that started to fall by the wayside because they just couldn't understand or deal or handle me making different choices. And that's okay too. And I think that's where picking joy sometimes becomes a harder decision, because we can see, oh, this doesn't agree with that person. Oh my God, I'm going to lose them, but really that's on them. And it's just a natural selection and process of weeding out, right? And so that's what I
Yeah,
experienced like in my own life.
I think so. I think too, it's if we go back to the visioning technique that you were talking about, and you understand that the woman or the person that is right over here that you are becoming, would he want someone like that and that doesn't want to get on the happy train to Joytown? You know what I'm saying? It's like that person, that you are becoming, they need to be equal now to who you are becoming. They need to raise their awareness, their vibration, whatever that is. And they might, or they might not. But you're going to be in a place where it's going to be totally fine, which is amazing. Like if you can imagine that you're going to be in a place, it's like, yeah, I can imagine myself in a place where I'm totally fine if Sharon doesn't call me ever again, or so. Like, yeah, totally. That is very motivating to know that I can get to a place where this is all going to feel really okay. And that also helps us, or it helped me along the journey. It's like, I knew when, I left my husband, I'm not going to get too into it, but I knew that we were going to be okay. I knew that my children were going to be okay. And I knew that the interim was going to cause them tremendous suffering. And I was willing to pay the price in the moment, because in the long run, we were going to be better than okay. I feel like I taught my daughters not to settle, that what they want is important. And so part of me picking joy also incorporated their well-being. And I even knew that my ex-husband at the time would be fine. I knew it. It's like, I just knew it. And so that knowing and seeing myself as this person, really helped to elevate. And it was, and this, it was excruciatingly painful. And I did feel guilty. And I never felt like I should have not, like I should go back. I never felt like that. But I felt a tremendous amount of guilt for the suffering that my choice caused in that moment. And for me, it was, I see the results, and I think about having stayed in that relationship and stayed small, what it was doing at the time to my psyche and my spirit, and what that would have been like for my children, and who they would have become as a result of having a parent that had so little regard for herself. What
So
kind of a
powerful.
message is that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree. I feel the same way. Yeah, I think it's a muscle that we need to flex, and that's
Mhm.
why we start with micro choices.
Yeah.
Make little changes. Don't
Mhm.
overwhelm yourself and think you need to overhaul everything all at once, but make micro choices and flex that muscle. And the thing is, we don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to know
Yes.
where this is going to take you. Just
Mhm.
make micro choices, focus on the little steps, and
Mhm.
the next step is going to present itself. The next choice is going to present itself. And
Mhm.
as long as you can stay in integrity and check in with yourself, take that pause and say, is that
Mhm.
going to take me to who I want to be, how I want to
Mhm.
feel?
Yeah.
And if it does, okay, here's your next step. If it doesn't,
Mhm.
but it's a muscle I feel like I had to learn to flex. Today, I mean, you and I worked together, I don't know, this was like 10, 11, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And I have come such a long way. Today, I
Mhm.
make choices that would have scared the pants of my
Yeah.
butt back then. Today, I'm like, no, we're not
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Yeah.
done. So you grow into that new version of yourself. And it's
Yeah.
really, really beautiful, especially in hindsight. You're like, what a
Yeah.
ride it's been.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I will put all of Krista's information into the show notes on the bottom. But before we wrap, I want to ask you, Krista, is there anything else that you think we should share with the audience? Anything else you want to talk about that you feel is important?
If Sabine and I could do this, you can do it too. And when I think about, you know, Sabine, you already said it, like all the things that have happened, if you can think about, if you're afraid to move forward in your life, if you're afraid to pick joy, think about all the things that you have done in the past. Like make a list of all those wonderful things because we forget,
Hmm.
you know, and know that you have, like the Buddha, you have the right, because you've been alive to pick joy. You have the right. You've done enough things that in this moment you can start to choose joy for yourself.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Krista, thank you so much for this conversation. Your work has shaped the way I learn to choose myself. And I know that so many listeners will get clarity from this conversation and permission to own their own lives. And I am so grateful that you joined us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And, I feel honored and overwhelmed with the praise. You really did the work. And I'm happy that, I was there for you, as a friend and as a guide, but you really did all the work, Sabine. And if only all of my clients were as tenacious as you, it would be great. So thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
My great pleasure. Thank you, Krista. What I'm sitting with after this conversation is Krista's image of the minefield and the open field right next to it. Because so many of us stay in what hurts, not because it's good, but because it's familiar. We know where to step. We know what to expect. And choosing ourselves can feel like walking into a wide open unknown. But Krista also reminded us of something simple and powerful. Joy is innate. And one way we pick it is by giving ourselves permission to begin again. Without punishment, without shame. So if you're listening and you're on the edge of change, I want you to borrow this. You don't have to blow up your whole life today. Just take one micro step that honors you. One pause, one breath, one choice that keeps you in the picture. Because that's how joy and freedom starts. So, thank you for being here with me today. And if something in this episode resonated with you, don't just move on. Take one small, honest step today. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, send it to them. Share it with them. Subscribe to the Pick Joy podcast for more. and I will see you here next time.